just digging right in there and showing us that if you ever wondered what Jewish spirituality was, this pasuk, this discussion, question and answer between Moses and God, is sort of the entry into that whole the whole concept of go to our website, which is HebrewLearningCircles.org. Go to Jewish Resources, scroll down to Parsha Videos, and you'll find the source sheet right there. When Moses asks God, "Who am I to appear before the Pharaoh, and that I should take Israel out of Egypt?" Is Moses being humble? Is being fearful? Or something else entirely? And obviously the Ishbitzer is going to go for the something else entirely. What would that something else be? God's response defies full coherence. And we're going to read the question in verse 11 and then the response in verse 12. So is there more to it? And why do Moses and God use the word Anochi, or I? It can also be Ani in Hebrew. And what does that mean?
The beginning of the Parsha speaks about the transformation of the Jewish people from a favored minority with favored status to a feared and loathed slave class. And that in itself is an interesting topic, but we end up being slaves. And then, of course, we have the birth. We have the decrees of the evil Parai. We have the birth and the adoption of Moshe Rabbeinu, the future savior of the Jewish people. Then we have Moses being exiled to a place called Midian. We have him getting married. And we have the revelation, God's revelation to Moses at the bush, the thorn bush that is on fire but not consumed. And we'll come back to that in a moment, because that conversation is going to be the subject of the Ishbitzer's piece today.
The book of Exodus, chapter 3, verses 11 and 12. Vayomer Moshe el ha'Elohim, mi anochi ki elech el Paro. But Moses says to God, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" And then he continues, "V'chi otzi et bnei Israel mimitzrayim," and free the Israelites from Egypt. And God answers, this is verse 12, "Vayomer ki eheyeh imach." And it says, and God says to him, "I will be with you." And by the way, the word eheyeh is also, we learn, is part of God's name in a later pasuk. "V'zeh lecha ha'ot," and this is to you a sign, "Ki anochi shlachticha beotziacha et ha'am mimitzrayim," that I, a sign that it was I who sent you, and when you have freed the people from Egypt, ta'avodun et Elohim al ha'har hazeh, you shall worship God at this mountain.
Moshe actually asks in this verse, he's asking two questions. Who am I? What are my qualifications? I feel unqualified to speak to a king. And the second question is, how will I, Lemaisa, in practicality, how will I be able to free the Jews and bring them out? It's not only freeing them from slave labor, it's removing the entire population from the country. A mass exodus to the country next door, the land of Israel. God answers, Zeh lecha ha'ois, this bush is the sign. Just as this bush is on fire but is not consumed, so too you who feel you are lowly like a thorn bush, you will be thrown into the furnace of Egypt, and you will come out without being consumed by the fire, which is the Egyptian army, etc. You will be successful. I will be with you. I am sending you. You have the power of God on your side, and therefore you will be able to extract. This is the answer to the second question. You will be. Yes, you will be able to, in fact, extract the entire population from Egypt. And then he gives a reason for it, which is part of what the Ishbitzer is going to go. That's the simple explanation.
היינו שהיה שואל שני דברים. We see that he asked two things. He basically is repeating Rashi here. Mi anochi, היינו, who am I? It's the first question. היינו, שהיה מבקש מהשם יתברך, שיעיר לו מפני מה הוא נבחר לגאול יותר מכל ישראל. So, meaning that he's asking God to enlighten him. What is the reason that he is the one chosen amongst all of Israel to be the leader? V'chi otzi היינו אמת יעבדו אותם בפרך וראוי שיגאלו רק על פי כך מה יהיה כשהוציאם, הלא זאת בטח אין כוונת השם יתברך שיוטב להם רק בעולם הזה. וכי יוציא, that's a second question, meaning, היינו, אמת כי יעבדו אותם בפרך וראוי שיגאלו. It's true that the Egyptians are enslaving them in very hard labor, and it is it's right. It makes sense for them to be redeemed and taken out from that. But even so, what will happen when I take them out? Should I take them out? I'm adding a little bit of my nuance here. It can't be God's intention that they're only being benefiting in this world. Basically, he's jumping off the ramp of material, the geopolitical, social justice. This is a level at which many of us, most of the time, are engaged. Passover, it's the holiday of liberation, etc. But he's jumping off that ramp and saying it can't be that this is only a material, practical purpose, but there's got to be some purpose in the world to come, or in the spiritual world.
They were used as slave labor, but overall, before Moses butts in, actually, their physical existence, their everyday to day life was not so bad. They had homes, they had plenty of food, they had what they needed. They had a normal life. It doesn't sound that much different from a job, from a lot of people who go to work every day. So Moses has a question. I'm going to go through this whole rigmarole. We're going to get them but what's the ultimate philosophical and theological purpose behind the freedom? That, according to the Ishbitzer, was Moshe's very deeply thought out question.
ועל זה השיבו השם יתברך. And to this, the blessed God replied, על השאלה מי אנוכי השיב לו כי עמך. Or the question, who am I to go speak to Pharaoh? So God replied to him, well, I will be with you. היינו, מחמת שידעתיך, כי אינך נוטה לשום דבר מצדך. Because I know you, says God to Moses, that you incline to humility. In other words, you don't need anything for you personally, רק למה שאני שולח לך, that you will do only what I am sending you to do. שם משה מורה על זה, because the Moses' name, Moshe, informs us about that. Kimin hamayim mishitiu. Moshe is, the meaning of his name is, I have drawn you out of the water. Mishitiu, Moshe. Hainu shenifshat mikol chemda v'anaot atzmo. That means that Moses was removed from all desires and pleasures for himself. And he would have no pride, no pride about the fact that God was speaking to him.
Mayim, water, represents physical pleasure. All our physical lusts and desires stem from the element, the so-called element of water. And Moshe, the miracle of his being saved, he was drawn out by Bas Paroi from the water. He was rather in control of his physical lusts and desires. That was why he was the perfect candidate. Why God says, I'm with you. I'm with you because you've made yourself a vessel to contain me, and I can speak through you.
Right, without it being filtered or corrupted through the natural layers of desire and pride. To be precise, what you said about desires, very clear. But he also says pride. So there's these, and those are the two big, you can say, obstacles in according to Jewish, spiritual thought, is pride and desires, and he is extracted from that. And then, okay, so that was up to now. We dealt with the first question, who am I? Now the second question, and should I take them out of Egypt? Halo ein kavanat Hashem yitbarach lehana'at olam hazeh. It's clear that God's intention is not to take them out from Egypt so they have more pleasure or more convenience in this world or more benefit in this world. So God tells him, when you take them out of Egypt, you will be at service of God.
Let my people go. Freedom. They leave out the comma. There's a period, not a period, there's a comma there. In order that they should serve God.
That's right.
In order to serve God, in order to become God's chosen people with a mission and responsibilities, etc. And so that's what the Ishbitzer is sort of highlighting here. Moshe Moshe also spaced it out because he heard, right. He needed to be told, don't worry, you're right, Taka. And the answer is no, they're being freed for a purpose.
To serve God is, I think that's something that's worth opening up because for a lot of us, and including myself at one time, it seems ridiculous to be free from slavery. By the way, when it says to serve God, the language in Hebrew is ta'avodun et Elokim, which is the very same word in Hebrew that is to serve the Pharaoh. Right. So it's not like it's some kind of different, So when you're Hebrew, it's easy to ask the question, so what's the big deal? What was I released? If I'm released from one slavery to another slavery, who needs that?
Right.
So the question is, what is the thing to work, what is the benefit? What's the qualitative difference between being a slave to God or a servant to God or somebody who's under the imperative of a divine mission? So you see, I'm already starting to interpret that, right? Then to be at service to, a human tyrant, right? And I think that's worth opening up. So it's clear that it's not the same thing. We're not going from one servitude to another servitude, but actually we're climbing the ladder. And then that I'm going to make that suggestion. I would say that the Ishbitzer would suffer the Meforshim, so certainly it's clear to them, but I just want to say that serving God is where we actually begin the whole discussion of what is spiritual life. What does it mean to be connected to God? Well, what is the nature of that relationship? What's the nature of the relationship of a person with oneself from a spiritual perspective?
Right.
So I just want to kind of bring the nuance of the language of what it means to serve God. So, to us who've been around, studying Torah, it's kind of like a shorthand. We say that we know
Yeah,
what we mean,
absolutely.
but I
Right.
want to, I want to make that available to
Mm-hmm.
people who are not adept in the, in the study. Okay, so let's continue. Hainu she'achnis etchem tachat uli ol Torah, ויהיה לי עסק עמכם בדברים החיים וקיימים לעולמי עד. And that means that I will bring you in underneath my yoke is typically the word, the yoke of Torah. This is God speaking. ויהיה לי עסק עמכם, and I will be involved with you. That's very interesting. I'll be engaged with you. God will be engaged with you.
Mm.
I just want to again throw. I don't know that we have time to open this up, but if you're somebody who likes Buddhist language, I will be enlightening you. You know, I will be gracing you if you want to use Christian language. So if you want to now come into the spiritual language of Torah of the Jewish tradition, God here is offering to engage with you. So wow, it's like, I mean,
If you accept upon yourself all these actionable requirements as a
right,
lifelong journey and mission,
right,
then you will find
right,
yourself in a space where God is opening himself up to you in very
right,
real
right,
and practical ways. That's, I think,
right.
it's a reciprocal relationship is the point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is an answer to the question: what does it mean to be at service of God, or to be it's spiritual practice. It's like
Right.
it's very simple. Like, "יהיה לי עסק עמכם בדברים החיים וקיימים לעולמי עד." And then God says, I will be engaged with you in the realms of things that are existing eternally, dipping your toe into the internal river, as it were.
Mm.
So it's like you're plugged into eternity, and that is a profound concept. I mean, it's like this is where I get excited. Can you imagine plugging yourself into the socket? You have a socket on the wall that's this socket of eternity, and you can plug into that. And the lamp that shines from that is not like any other lamp you have in the house. So this is a portal. God is saying, I'm taking you into the desert, but the plug-in to eternity is there.
Exactly. At Har Sinai, as we'll conclude here with some nice play on
Right.
words.
וזהו שאמר לו, וזה לך האות. And that's what it means when he says in the pasuk earlier, and this is a sign to you, Hi anochi shlachticha, that I, and here the emphasis on the word anochi, not I ani, but the word anochi, which to also illustrate the importance of that word, that's the first word of the Ten Commandments. And God says, Anochi Hashem Lochecha, right? So I am the God, your God, etc. So Anochi Shlachticha, who sent you? This Anochi energy, this Anochi space, right? Shlachticha. V'lo amar lo ani. God did not present God's self to him in the word ani, I, a simple I, the ordinary I. So now the last sentence, he will conclude here, and he says, Ki ot kaf more al davar kayam לעולמי עד. The only difference between Anochi and Ani is Anochi has an additional letter, Chaf. He says the letter Chaf points to these eternal matters as it is known.
The letter Chaf is the 11th letter in the Hebrew alphabet. However, according to Hebrew numerology, so the 11th letter Chaf represents 20.
Yeah.
20 is 10 and 10. The 10 commandments, as you alluded to, Anochi, and the 10 Maimarim, the 10 statements the universe was created. So the letter Chaf represents a very high revelation of godliness. It equals the word Keser, which means crown. And Kabbalistically, crown is that which is above the creative process. If you look at the shape of a chaf, it's like a pipe whose ends have been bent in.
Mm-hmm.
This gets back to what you were saying before about bittul, about humility.
Yeah.
Humility, and it's all the same thing. Humility means I'm allowing myself in a way to be controlled by someone else's will.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea of a servant. And when I make myself a vessel for that, then God can fill himself up within each and every one of us.
You gave such a broad kind of array of meanings just to one letter, to the letter Chaf. And, it just shows that it's not random. In other words, there's a lot of, that one little Chaf that's plugged into the Ani takes the eye from like the little eye to the supreme eye, to God's eye, And I just want to add one more piece to it, that Kaf also is the first letter of Kli, a vessel, right? So what you said about vessel, I mean, it's all in there. It's the humility and the Kli and the and the vessel.
Very good. Kli. The Chaf swallows the Li. The self-importance.
The selfishness. Wow.
I put the Li into the Chaf.
Amazing. He's really telling us that if you had any doubt that the leaving, that Moses taking people out of Egypt, out of slavery, was actually kind of the opening of really a kind of a spiritual expansion, and a spiritual mission, for the Jewish people. If there was any doubt, the Ishbitzer is just sticking right in there and showing us that if you ever wondered what Jewish spirituality was, this pasuk, this discussion, question and answer between Moses and God is sort of the entry into that whole the whole concept of being able to be in conversation with God, and the practice and the effort that it takes, but also the fact that God is actually reaching to us. I think that's the piece where God doesn't say just serve me. God says, I will be dealing with you. I will having a relationship with you. You take the step into the desert, I will come and meet you.
What?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Another exciting deep dive with Ishbitzer. Let's meet again next Wednesday morning, 9:00. Shalom for now. Click subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. We really appreciate that. Like to have that extra layer of connection with you. Like and subscribe. Come back next Wednesday, 9:00 in the morning. Mayim rabim lo yuchlu